I was 13 and just had my elementary school graduation ceremony. My friends and I decided to stay outside late and celebrate. We didn't drink at the time, so our idea of celebration was playing manhunt or whatever around our neighborhood until about 8 or 9 p.m. As the sun began to set, my friends made their way home one by one. A couple of my friends and I decided to stay out a little longer. To us, this was living dangerously, especially since our neighborhood was considered extremely unsafe. My girlfriend at the time, Victoria, said she had to go home first and check in with her mother to let her know where she was. We didn't have cell phones at the time. She said she would go home for a second and come right back. She only lived about 2 blocks away from where we were hanging out, so no one made much of it. 10 minutes had gone by and we continued playing our games. 15 minutes had gone by and she still never came back. I've always been an unusually paranoid person. I currently have an anxiety disorder, so maybe that's why. So when she hadn't come back, I started getting very concerned. It didn't make sense for it to take her this long to cover 2 blocks there and back. My friends reassured me that she was probably just convincing her mother to let her stay outside. Finally, after about 20 minutes, we see Victoria coming to us and crying with scratches on her right arm. She told us that on her way back to the park, there was a car following her and she started walking faster because she was getting creeped out. She's used to getting whistled at by older men. She was a pretty mature and brave girl and usually didn't lose her cool when stuff like this happened. But I recall her saying that this time a feeling of dread and gloominess washed over her. About after 30 seconds, the car pulled up next to her and a man in a mask came out and tried to grab her. She screamed and tried fighting back. The man was about to drag her to the car when suddenly another car was driving down the road, passing by them. When it came close enough, the man let go of her arm and went back to his car, and drove away while she ran for her life, back to the park. By the time she got to the park, there were only 2 people remaining. Me and Victoria's best friend Jennifer. Petrified, Victoria begged us to walk her back home and said that her dad would drop me and Jennifer at our houses. It was pretty dark at this point, so obviously we agreed. We walked through the field and were walking through our school parking lot when suddenly we get blinded by the front lights of a car. As you would suspect, the man in the mask came out of the car. At first, I thought if he got close enough, me and my 2 friends might have had a shot at overwhelming him since it was 3-on-1 and would have had a chance to get away. At the very least, I could hold him off while they made a run for it. What happened next stripped me of every last bit of courage I had while fear and panic quickly came over me. 2 other men had come out of the car. One of them was a giant. At this point, I was scared shitless. There was a few meters between us when they came out the car, but you could still hear them talking. "Oh look, she's got a friend. Let's take her too," one of them said excitedly. I was probably the most frightened at that point. These monsters were going to take my friends and do God knows what to them, and chances are they were going to kill me if I stood in the way. I had to think quickly because they were getting closer. The parking lot was at a slight slant, sort of like a driveway, so there were bricks laid out to keep some of the teachers' cars from rolling backwards during the day. I honestly don't know what to call what I did next. It was either an act of bravery or complete insanity. I always considered myself to be a bit of a timid boy, even cowardly at times. I always avoided fights and I used to get picked on, even though I was stronger than a lot of people in my grade. But this time something came over me. I quickly grabbed one of the bricks beside me and threw it onto their car. It smashed their left light, which really pissed them off. I yelled at Victoria and Jennifer to run the opposite direction while I held them off. I grabbed another brick and threw it into them when they tried to run after Victoria. It did keep them away and buy my friends a bit of time. Now I should tell you that I ran track and I was pretty damn good at it. Top 3 in the city actually, so I was quite a bit strong for my age. And I was more than confident that they wouldn't catch me if I ran. After about 10 seconds, Victoria and Jennifer had covered maybe 40 meters or so, giving them enough distance between us. That really pissed the big guy off. He pulled out a box cutter and started charging at me. At this point, I ran to my left and sprinted as fast as I could and didn't look back. I ran all the way to the fence that bordered the school property. Unfortunately, it was way too tall for me to climb, and the men were gaining on me quickly. Luckily, I remembered that close by, the bottom one of the fences was cut wide open, enough for me to slide through. I knew this because I used to go through that hole to get into my friend Martin's backyard. By this time, the two smaller men were really close, while the big fella was some ways back. I was pretty exhausted since I was running in dress clothes. On top of that, it was dark and I was having trouble finding the hole in the fence. I remember when I saw it, I ran for it as if I had been in the desert and saw an oasis of water. I tried to slide under the fence and run to Martin's back door, but one of the men had grabbed my tux jacket and tried to pull me back to their side of the fence. Growing up in this neighborhood, I had experienced a lot of scary stuff, but I have to say this was by far the scariest moment of my life. Have you ever felt that powerful feeling that transcends fear? The only word I can think of to describe it is death. It felt like death. I felt my heart seize up as my limbs got heavier, all while my mind started becoming hyperactive as the stench of alcohol on the man came flooding into my nose. It was honestly as though the Grim Reaper himself was holding on to me. I knew that once I got dragged to the other side of the fence, I was going to get stabbed or worse. I clutched onto the fence as tightly as I could. I didn't try to say words at first. I just tried to scream, as loud as I could so anyone in the houses could hear me. Then when I noticed the light in Martin's house along with some of his neighbors turn on, I started screaming for Martin and screaming for someone to please help me. Martin's dad is a very large and terrifying man, and he always keeps a machete in his house for safety. He's one guy you absolutely never want to fuck with. So when he pulled the backyard door and saw me getting dragged through the fence, he charged at us like a wild boar. The man had let go of my jacket and told his accomplices to run for it. "Shit, someone's coming, let's get the hell out of here," he said. When Martin's dad got a hold of me, he just cradled me as I sobbed uncontrollably and apparently blacked out in his arms. I don't remember it, but he recalls that I was muttering words, telling him to find Victoria, but I was talking too fast for him to understand properly, and my eyes were rolling back into my head. I'm pretty sure I had a seizure. Police and the ambulance came, and I was taken to the emergency room. I explained to them what had happened, and they went to Jennifer's house, where Victoria was staying, and got her side of the story. There wasn't much the police could have done since we didn't have any idea what they looked like, since they had masks on. They also said that since incidences like this happened in my area so frequently, there was even less they could do, especially without any leads. That's the worst part of it all to me. It happens too often. Victoria moved from that area shortly after, and for the rest of the time she spent in that neighborhood, she wasn't allowed to leave her house. I too am now living in a different area. Sometimes I go back there to visit my old friends and take a walk around that school park. I loved that school, but the memory of that park still haunts me. I still get a cold shiver down my spine when I see it. I never want to go there again, and for all the people I encountered there, especially the men in the mask, let's never meet again.